The beautiful archipelago of Galapagos that with its unique characteristics inspired Charles Darwin to develop the theory of evolution is now in more danger than ever. That's at least according to some guides on Galapagos that we have talked to on the week that we have spent over there. That's because the unique and fragile ecology of those islands really depend on tourism to protect it. So in this video I will talk to you about why the Galapagos Islands are special, why they need protection, what your responsibilities are if you travel during this time, and I will give you some good reasons why you should travel now. And again, I will be using timestamps in this video, so if you only care about a few segments, you can go and watch them. There are actually a few reasons why the Galapagos Islands are really special. One is the geology, because the islands are really young, geologically speaking at least, and the younger islands are completely different from the newer islands, which allow the flora and fauna to develop very differently from one island to the other. And that's something that Darwin found very fascinating and inspired him to create the theory of evolution. I'm not going in depth into this topic. That's something that you can look up somewhere else, although I think it's very, very interesting. Anyways, the second reason that the islands are very special is because the human influence is really, really small compared to other places in the world. Sure, the islands were already discovered in 1535, but because the islands are really dry, no one really cared to live there, and the islands were mainly used by pirates and whalers. A sanctuary until 1832, when Ecuador finally claimed those islands and actually started some settlements over there. But still, even then, the islands were not very interesting to live. And until 1959, when the islands were finally declared a UNESCO World Heritage Natural Site, only 3% of the islands were actually inhabited. 1959 is actually exactly 100 years after Darwin published his book on the theory of evolution. So it was like a birthday present to the islands. And in 1959, when the islands were declared a national park, everything that was not settled by then, so the 97% of the islands that were not settled were declared a national park. And they have stayed like that since then. Sure, there were already some problems because humans, when they travel somewhere, they introduce new species, new invasive species. So they really had problems with wild dogs, goats, boars, cats, rats, and they had to eradicate them first on some pretty big islands. I think that except for rats, they actually managed to eradicate the animals that don't belong there. But they still have problems with plants, of course. If you visit the inhabited parts, you will see that the flora is completely different from the uninhabited parts. The inhabited parts are actually completely covered in invasive species, so they have to spend a lot of money and effort on preventing the invasive species to spread over the other islands. And they're pretty successful doing that, but only as long as tourism money comes in. And this is actually where the problem in the archipelago lies. It is completely dependent on tourism. It doesn't have any other industries. So the unique ecology on those islands really depend on tourism to protect it. Without tourism, the locals will have to look for other ways of making money that will hurt the nature, that will hurt the uniqueness. And if things don't improve soon, Galapagos will lose its beauty as a pristine, almost untouched island chain. Sadly, going to Galapagos at the moment is not very easy, but it's also not as hard as you might think when you read the list of requirements that they have to enter the islands. The first thing you have to do, you need a negative PCR test before actually entering Ecuador. But that PCR test can be up to 10 days old, so they are more lax than other countries when it comes to that. But then when you're in Ecuador, you actually need other things to enter Galapagos. One of them is another negative PCR test that is taken in Ecuador. That one can be up to 96 hours old. And you also need a safe passage form. You also need a return ticket out of Galapagos. You need an insurance and a few other small things. But the good news is that your tour operator or hotel where you're staying will actually help you with getting all of it, or at least most of it. And that safe contact form that I mentioned before actually means that you can only travel to Galapagos if you have booked a tour with a tour operator or a stay in a hotel, someone that can vouch for you, that can verify that you're staying with them and that you meet the requirements to go with them. We had a tour operator, we already had it before entering Ecuador, and they actually took care of everything. They even organized the PCR test that we had taken in Ecuador to get to Galapagos. The guys from the laboratory came to our hotel, took the samples, and the next day in the morning we already had the negative results. And everything else, a safe form passage, flight tickets, and the other little things that had to be taken care of, we were able to live up to the tour operator, and that allowed us to spend a good time in Quito without having to worry about anything. So yeah, it might sound a little bit scary at the moment, but the tour operators and hotels really want you to get there, so they will help you as much as possible. So don't be afraid by that. Contact them first, talk to them about the process, and it will turn out to be way easier than it sounded in the beginning. Now let me get into traveling responsibly. Ecuador at the moment does have a strict wear a mask rule. Officially, you're only allowed to remove your mask when you are in your hotel room or in your cabin in the cruise ship. And I think that you should respect those rules as much as possible. When you're on the beach, no one will ask you to wear a mask. And of course, there are also other situations when it's okay to remove a mask, but always be sensible and respect other people. Don't be the selfish tourist that only cares about yourself. Now, let me give you some good reasons why you should travel to Galapagos now. First, let me start with a selfish reason. It will never be as cheap to travel to Galapagos as it is now, especially if you want to do a cruise. There are really insane offers and you can save more than 50% on cruises at the moment. And don't only believe the numbers that you see online, also contact the tour operators and ask them if there are some special offers, because that's what we did. First we looked for a tour online and sure, they had some discounted prices, but when we got into contact with the tour operator, they showed us that there are some offers that were actually way cheaper than what we were able to see online. And not only the price, also everything will be less crowded. At the moment, the tour guide can only take up to 10 people to the island at the same time. Usually the times that people can step onto the island are fixed. Each tour guide gets a time when he can take his group onto the island, but at the moment there are actually no other groups. On one island we visited, it was only our ship with 2 groups. On another island there were actually 2 boats with 3 or 4 groups total. And we also had some smaller tours where only Evelyn and I were in the group. So if you want to visit the islands and avoid crowds, now is the perfect time to visit, because usually the Galapagos Islands are really crowded. People like to visit it because of the pristine, beautiful nature, of the animals that you can see and everything. And of course, I can also give you a more altruistic reason why you should visit Galapagos now. And those are actually more important to me than the selfish reasons that I mentioned before. First, people are suffering, people are, well, I'd say starving, but many people that couldn't afford to live there anymore moved back to mainland Ecuador. I don't know how they are doing, but you see that the industry is really suffering. Almost everything is closed in town, especially on the tourist main road. You see so many stores that are closed down. As I've said, the islands are very pristine, untouched so far by humanity, because tourism paid for everything. Tourism gave people reason to avoid anything that would damage the islands and its ecology. And of course, if people don't have any income anymore, they have to look for other ways to make money. And what does that mean? Well, one of them is do more fishing, do less responsible fishing, and the other one is start mining, because Galapagos does have resources that at the moment they didn't have any reason to tap into, but if money doesn't come in, they have to open up mines and therefore destroy the island. And I really wanted to share this message with all of you, because maybe you are someone like us who cares about protecting nature and you didn't know how precarious the situation is at the moment. So now you know, consider traveling there, consider spending your money there. Yes, that's a weird thing to ask, but also if you do care about nature but don't have the means to travel there, share this message with other people who might have the means to travel there, because I think it's a very important thing to do. But that's actually everything that I wanted to share with you today. Don't forget to subscribe, like and comment. Thank you very much for watching, and see you again in the next video. Bye bye.